go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7:02. And let's approve the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
And we'll vote by roll call.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Presentations, proclamations, and visitors. Any public comments?
Is there anyone attending the meeting that would like to address the council under public comment?
Move on to consent agenda. Get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to present the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Vote by roll call.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick.
Aye.
Motion passes.
No public hearing tonight, no old business, new business. Is our accounting software recommendations.
I'd like to give you a quick staff report.
Oh, do we have that?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So as council is aware, we need to upgrade our citywide accounting software system. And last year we budgeted to do the upgrade. And so for the last several months, we've been working on a request for proposals and interested vendors that might be interested or willing to provide a proposal. We received 2 proposals through our RFP. One room was from Tyler Technologies, and the other proposal was from Cassell Incorporated. And so we have a scoring sheet that's within your documents. And each company was scored based on their proposals. We also did on-site demos here at City Hall with each vendor, but we also went out and contacted other cities that were using each of these software platforms and talked to the staff, what they liked, what they didn't like, issues that they were dealing with, customer service, all of those types of things that we would deal with on a regular basis. And based on that, our recommendation is that we would award the software proposal to Cassell Incorporated. And I think in your staff report, we presented a motion. If you could keep that motion there, because there would be some changes in cost. We would go once we award based on the proposal that they submitted, but we're actually going to try to negotiate some changes in the payment structure and the cost and get a reduction. They've indicated to us just recently, just today, that they were willing to reduce the proposal by about $7,100. We had to do that negotiation after we made the recommendation. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions. If we move forward with the software package, what would happen is we'd contract with them. They would start setting up the transfer of data to get everything loaded in. That process right now is taking a year-ish. So we wouldn't actually see this implemented until sometime next year, because it's a lot of data to transfer. We have to have kind of a secondary site operating and to make sure everything's working right before we actually do the conversion and go live. So it's a big project for the city. Josh Hoyer, our finance director, he's I think online with us here. There he is. And so any technical questions that you might have, he'd be happy to answer. I'll do my best if they're not too technical in nature, because he's the kind of finance guru here.
Anyone have any questions?
Throw in the report we got, so.
Yeah, I figured it's pretty reasonable and seemed like we matched ourselves up with a lot of surrounding cities, which I was thinking if multiple cities around us that are kind of our size are using it, and potentially individuals working there could end up here, less training time to get them up to speed on stuff. That makes things a lot easier just moving forward if everybody's really on the same system.
Yeah, and there's also possibilities. I mean, you have some possibilities of even contracts for services if we had open positions or things of that nature that you might not necessarily grab a staff person, but you could always contract. There's a number of cities that have done that when they've been short of staff. And so it's good if you've got somebody nearby that is already familiar with the system. Both systems are fairly intuitive. You know, it's kind of dialing in the proficiency is where that skill level comes in, would be my assessment.
So you're needing a motion tonight?
Are we motioning the dollar amount, or you said it's going to be different?
What I would do is just not to exceed, if you could just say not to exceed.
Okay.
Does that seem right to you, Josh?
Yeah, that would give us enough wiggle room.
I move to authorize the city to enter a contract with Cassell Inc. for purchase of its Cassell software and services in the amount not to exceed $94,070 plus annual software support as presented by staff.
I'll second.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Counselor Casares.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Evening, council.
Hi, Nico.
Evening,
Aye.
Counselor.
Okay, moving on. Next item, West Tech Engineering.
Yes, as council knows, we have been working on our water system improvements. And one of the things that we have to do is a wetland delineation report for the new wells and reservoir. I think this is specific to the well sites, so that we can get a permit. And as you know, we're trying to do things on dual tracks because it's going to take a while to actually get a well permit approved or withdraw permit approved. So this is kind of the next phase of this project. And we need to have this work done. So I can answer any questions specific. There's a proposal with the scope of work. It's a fairly standard proposal, and it's it's going to be administered and managed by West Tech Engineering, which is our engineer of record.
Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the West Tech Engineering proposal JO 2599.4041.0 in the amount of $16,000 for water system improvement project wetlands delineation proposal from Fund 028-636 as presented by staff.
Second.
Vote by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
motion passes.
Next item, first reading of ordinance number 710.
So this is brought before you, as the council knows, we have a number of franchise agreements within the city, and a franchise agreement is basically a rent of the public right of ways for utility companies. And Pacific Corp is our local power provider. in the city, so they've had a franchise for a number of years. They're on a 10-year renewal timeline, and this year was the end of their 10-year term. They had sent us some new language for a renewal agreement. And just with everything that's been going on, we have not been able to get to the renewal. So what we're bringing to you tonight is an special ordinance that just provides an extension to the current agreement, the current terms, while we work on the new franchise agreement to come forward to council. This will extend it. This ordinance will extend their franchise under the current terms until December of this year. So it's just a few months, and that should give us time to complete the regular ordinance. Happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
I had a question, Ron, just for the public's consumption. Is there, I mean, I kind of figure this might be the reason is because just the shortened timeline we have to work with on it. Is that why we're declaring an emergency on this one?
You got a little jumbled up there at the end, but I think you're wanting to know the reason a little specific to the extension or the reason we didn't get it completed.
Oh, no. Just we're because of the shortened timeline we have regarding getting this agreement in place. Is that why we're declaring an emergency? That was the only question.
Oh, yeah. As you know, I'm sorry, I should have addressed that as part of my staff report. As you know, I typically don't like to include emergency clauses with ordinances. This one is actually expired. So that's the reason why it needs to take effect immediately. Typically, an ordinance would be 30 days after it's approved. And that's why, yes, you're correct. That's why there's an emergency clause. This ordinance and when we bring before you the marijuana and psilocybin ordinance a little later this fall, both of those will have emergency clauses because of the implementation time period associated with them. But typically we don't do that as a matter of practice. Yes.
I appreciate it, Ron. Thank you.
Oh, so is this one that we could do by title only?
Yes, you can do it by title only.
Remind me what I'm supposed to say again.
Just the first reading, 710 ordinance by title only.
The first reading of 710 ordinance by title only, an ordinance extending the franchise granted to Pacific Power doing business as, granted to Pacific Core doing business as Pacific Power via ordinance 169 declaring an emergency.
Move to approve the first reading of ordinance number 710 and ordinance extending that franchise granted to Pacific Corp doing business as Pacific Power via ordinance 619 declaring an emergency as presented by staff.
I'll second.
Seconded.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
motion passes.
And now that was a unanimous motion, we could go ahead and move to the second reading if council so desired.
Approve the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 710 and ordinance extending the franchise granted to Pacific Corp doing business as Pacific Power via ordinance 619 declaring an emergency with as presented by staff.
Second.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
motion passes.
Next item is review of draft ordinance for amendment to develop ordinance number 705.
Yeah, so as council recalls, when we were having our discussion to put both psilocybin and marijuana on the ballot in front of the voters, one of the things that we discussed was we need to put some language within the development code that creates a land use conditions of approval for both of these types of uses. And the reason why we need to do that is because, as an example, if marijuana was to pass, that would become legal to put in an application with the city as soon as the election was certified. And it takes a few months to do, as you know, from once we actually initiate the process to get a development code amendment in front of council. We do have to notify state agencies at least 35 days before the first hearing. The first hearing needs to be in front of our advisory board, which is the planning commission. And then if, depending on their recommendation, then it would come before council. So we're really on a tight schedule. We weren't really anticipating these things popping up when they did. And so based on the discussion we had here and what other cities have done as far as framework and our previous ordinances related to the marijuana subject, we've drafted some parameters, and I'll just, they're in your packet and you could read them. It's fairly simple and generic. They're not, they're not very technical in nature. But a couple of the highlights would be, we would be citing marijuana in the industrial zone. Obviously, we're memorializing some state requirements, so 1,000 feet from a school daycare. I've mapped our industrial zone, and I don't really think that there's any conflicts unless there's a state approved daycare that I'm not aware of. That would be the only thing, but I think most of our industrial zones could cite these industries, so I think that's a good location for them. We wouldn't allow drive-through business. That's fairly standard in most cities that I've seen. And then keeping the operation between 10 p.m. or from the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So not having them operating in the middle of the night. That seems to be pretty standard language. Good lighting, which is, we kind of have that in our development ordinance anyway, so we're just memorializing it again here. The facilities can't be blocked, or, there has to be a clear line of sight. And other than that, it's fairly disposable, has hazardous material according to state standards, which all of those are fairly common. And then they have to be a conditional use permit, which means if a business wanted to site, they have to go through the planning commission board because it is a conditional approval type action. It's not an outright permitted action because we're trying to mitigate any impacts depending on how it's located and where it's located. So what we would suggest is that we keep those. Those are very basic things. If you have other things in there, we certainly can throw those out there and get these in. I think this fairly covers the city and protects local neighboring businesses and residents. So I think this is fairly reasonable. What we've also done is we've taken the same regulations for the marijuana and we've just incorporated those for the psilocybin. And I don't know that much about the mushrooms and how that's going to end up the framework's going to end up through the state rules. So really, it's just land use, it's siting, hours of operation, and clear site, that kind of stuff. So there may be, depending on what happens at the state, council may want to come back and revisit it, but at least for now, I think this is a good start. What I'm asking for tonight is not an action from you, but I just want to get feedback from you if you think this is reasonable, if there's something we've missed here that you'd like us to include. We can certainly do that before we start putting the finishing touches on it and get out the notices and get the hearing scheduled.
I just want to make sure with the psilocybin that we have odor control because they're growing it in compost.
Yeah,
We already
and
have that issue occasionally with others in town, so I want to make sure that we have something in there for that.
we did that in both. And so
Okay.
if you look, it says L shall maintain an enhanced ventilation system designed to prevent the detection of marijuana odor from adjacent properties in the public right of way. And then that gives them some options, and the same for the
Okay.
psilocybin. Yeah. That was one thing I took away from our last meeting was we should have something in there related to odor.
I read
Even
it.
though she's saying compost has an odor. It's not just that it was organic manure stuff. It all has an odor.
Yes. And I can clean that language up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Are we on the right track?
I think so.
it's
yeah.
very similar to what we had when marijuana first came in from what I could see. So
Yeah.
I think you pretty well covered it.
All right, well, if, with that discussion, then I'll go ahead and I'll clean this up. I'll put it inside a red line version of the development ordinance. I'm gonna go ahead and include the artificial turf issue since it's coming up. We're gonna do it one time. And I'll get that in front of I'll do the notice, I'll get it in front of the planning commission.
Moving on, number 7, city administrator report.
Yes, so council, the police report is in your packet, public works report is in your packet. Do you have any questions on either of those? All right, I'll go ahead and go to my report. Well, really, my report has a lot to do with the Corn Festival and just reporting back that we had a really good year. And even though our sponsorship was down a little bit, we were able to maximize the revenue. And I think we actually did a little bit better than last year overall. So that's good news. We had more than 130 volunteers. We actually think the number may be a little higher. There may be some folks that we don't have incorporated in that number, but that's a huge number of volunteers. And we've been working through this new framework since the city took over managing the entire event of inviting nonprofit service groups within Marion County to come and help staff our event. And I think it's been a great little system. And the idea is it becomes a fundraiser for the service groups that participate. And as you guys know, because I think I saw all of you down there, we just had a great work crew, and I didn't kill myself this year. I almost tried to do that last year, but everything went really well this year. And there's still room for improvements. This is only our second year managing this event, but I think our profit is real close to 18,000. We may have some bills that come in that aren't associated with this, but I don't think they're going to be that high. And we still have the liquor revenue that hasn't been reported. So I think at most, if we ended up awarding the framework that I put into this report to the service groups, the city might be kicking in $1,500 or something, which early on we had talked about because we had to, normally we'd be using staff to help get extra donations. We had talked about maybe putting in even $5,000 or $8,000 because we were down so far in sponsors, but clearly we were able to make most of that up in revenue. So I really don't think we need to kick a bunch of money into this. I think we could award in this framework and our folks would be really happy. And again, it'll promote those nonprofits to use this as a fundraiser and come back and be even more excited next year. So we have a outline in my staff report. The three groups that participated both days and had large numbers of volunteers were the Exchange Club, Marion County Search and Rescue, and the Santiam Hospital. We also had the Historical Society that had a number of volunteers. We had the elementary school, the Girl Scout troop. They had a great group there this year helping us out. The community theater and Mama's Kitchen. We didn't have as many volunteers from Mama's Kitchen, but they're a local food bank, so we felt we should give them a little bit of revenue from the Corn Festival. So if you agree with that framework, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's really just based on the work that they did, the amount of volunteers that they had, and kind of how much money they generated, but not necessarily tied dollar to dollar from the money they generated. So as an example, corn shuckers aren't generating any money. Corn cookers, those folks are all working for free. So the things that are generating money has to get distributed. So it's a bit of a subjective. There's not really a formula, but we think this rewards the effort that was put out by each group. And if you're concurrent, if you like that or agree with that or have a different opinion, it's up to you. And then if you agree with that, we'd bring contracts for approval at the next meeting.
I think it looks reasonable.
Yeah.
Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Ron, I agree with the totals put forth. I think it works out really, really well. The only thing I would ask maybe next year, or well, obviously part of this year too, is if we can, since we're the de facto board for the Corn Festival now, that we maybe be involved a little bit more with kind of the planning discussion before the event, be it like 6 months before or something, just to kind of, I think, help flesh out some of the details. It kind of felt like some of the stuff that kind of came before us was kind of last minute. And I know that was going to kind of happen with, staffing issues and just so much on the plate to tackle, policy wise, in addition to having, less people to work with in this, city hall. So I know it was kind of difficult, but I'm kind of hoping that because of us at this point being the de facto board of the Corn Festival, that maybe we can try to have at least a couple of meetings as a council evening during, council meeting time to kind of discuss some, a little bit of visioning and kind of planning for the Corn Festival for next year.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do that, Counselor. But we don't have a Corn Festival board. We have an events planning committee, and everybody's invited. We meet every month. There might be a month or two out of the year where we don't meet, but for the most part, we meet almost every month. And that's where we do all the planning at. And I know it's during the day, and that might be hard or difficult for you to attend. It's usually during the day in the mornings, but I can come back and do a brief to council if that's what you'd like.
I think just for the decision-making sake of it, I think if we could even have just, 1 or 2 meetings, because it's been done in the past where we're able to do that and kind of help out some things a little bit better and work in concert with the people that we have involved with the, planning committee. It's not that we're going to make like hard, difficult decisions, and then kind of hamper anyone that's involved on the, events planning committee or anything like that. I just think us being a little involved and taking a little time during our council meeting, especially if we use it during, kind of a sort of visioning for the Corn Festival, I think that'd be beneficial to the event of, overall. I think that kind of help, with planning a little bit better, if we were to do that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll schedule it in on the calendar to get in after the first of the year and maybe a month before the festival.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you,
All
Ron.
right, yeah. All right, the only other thing in my report is just a welcome. We do have 2 new staff, Haley Brewster, who's here with us tonight. She's kind of learning the audio system, and Kirsty Pizzuto. I have to make sure I pronounce her name right. And they've been great additions to our staff. They've been doing a fantastic job. And you might see that my stress level is down a little less because we actually have help. And that it's just been great. I'm really enjoying having our 2 new staff members. And then actually, this was where I was going to touch on the development ordinance, just let you know that there would be an emergency clause in this development ordinance update again. So we'll have that coming before you as soon as we can. It's probably going to be the end of October, the first part of November. So it'll probably be the first meeting in November would be my guess is the quickest we would be able to get it to you. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Have mayor and council reports. Anybody?
I did have a brief shout out I want to give just to everybody that helped with putting all the events together for the Corn Festival. Just it was awesome to see the volunteerism and just people stepping up. I do want to also give some special recognition also to Deanna Cox. She ran an amazing rock hunt event as a part of the Corn Festival, and it was neat to see kids go out, look for rocks, adults look for rocks, and just in general not only make it a fun thing. That was another positive piece of the Corn Festival, but also in general something that was a healthy activity too, because I know there are people that definitely are couch potatoes that it actually kicked in the butt a little bit to have them get up and move around looking for rocks. So I just want to give a kudos to her for that awesome event she put together with the Corn Festival, as well as just everybody that volunteered. So thank you.
On to good of the order. Anything for good of the order? Correspondence? Then we're going to move on. Do you have something?
Executive session.
Yeah. Close the public portion of the meeting and move into executive session. At, what time is it? At 7:36.
And we need to cite, we're
Oh.
entering an executive session under ORS 192.6602A to consider employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or an individual agent. We're not expecting there's not going to be an action, a formal action from council. We'll just re-adjourn to conclude.